You might know someone like this, or maybe this person is you. They don't come to family holidays. They don't call. They don't reply to messages. When asked about their parents, they say briefly, "We don't talk," and close the subject. From the outside, it looks harsh. Sometimes it looks like ingratitude, sometimes like coldness. But the truth is, people don't cut ties with their family for no reason. It's almost never impulsive, and almost never about a single event. Let's call our person Leo. Leo didn't grow up thinking, "One day I'll stop talking to my family." It was the opposite. For a long time, he tried to be normal, convenient, understanding, someone who doesn't cause problems. But over time, he noticed a strange pattern. Every conversation with his family seemed to pull him back into a version of himself he had already outgrown. They didn't talk to him like a separate, adult person, but like a project that still needed to be fixed. They didn't ask, they explained. They didn't listen, they corrected. They didn't show interest, they evaluated. And every time he walked away from these conversations with the feeling that he had been carefully but persistently put back in the wrong place. On the surface, everything looked decent. No shouting, no drama. But inside, the sense kept growing that his life, in that space, wasn't really his. And this is where something begins that many people don't understand. People rarely leave their family because of conflict. More often, they leave because of constant pressure to not be themselves. Not because of one big scandal, but because of a long, quiet erosion of boundaries. Leo tried to explain. Sometimes he argued. Sometimes he stayed silent. Sometimes he convinced himself that this is how it is for everyone, that you just have to endure, that it's family. But at some point, he noticed something simple and terrifying. Every contact made his life worse, not better, not louder, not more painful, just worse, smaller, narrower. And that's when a thought appeared for the first time, frightening in its simplicity. What if I just stop? Not to punish, not to prove anything, not to explain, just to leave. From the outside, it looks like cruelty. From the inside, it feels like an attempt to stop falling apart. And this is where the real inner conflict begins. Because along with relief comes a heavy feeling that you're doing something wrong. An old voice immediately turns on in your head. You can't do that. They're your parents. Normal people don't act this way. And the person ends up caught between two things: the need to preserve themselves and the fear of being a bad person. This is a very hard place to be. But there's another truth that is rarely said out loud. Sometimes people cut ties with their family not because the family is bad, but because the family doesn't recognize their separateness. For some parents, a child remains forever someone who needs to be guided, corrected, and told how to live properly, even when that child is well into their 30s. And at some point, a person realizes, to be myself, I need distance. Sometimes distance isn't hatred. It's the only way not to disappear inside. But there is another side, a less comfortable one. Sometimes a person cuts ties not because it's truly impossible to stay, but because they don't know how to tolerate the tension of close relationships. They don't know how to speak directly, defend boundaries, stay in difficult conversations, tolerate someone else's dissatisfaction. And then the cutoff becomes not a solution, but a way to avoid feeling the problem. From the outside, these two stories look the same. On the inside, they are completely different. There are families you truly have to leave in order to preserve yourself. And there are situations where leaving is simply a frozen conflict that was never lived through. Leo told himself for a long time, it's easier this way. And that was true. But then another question appeared. Did I really choose freedom? Or did I just learn not to touch what hurts? Because crossing people out of your life is always easier than learning how to stay in relationships that are imperfect, uncomfortable, and sometimes painful. It's much easier to disappear than to say, you can't treat me like this. Much easier to close the door than to risk staying and rebuilding boundaries. But sometimes, cutting ties really is the only healthy choice. And sometimes, it's just the easiest one. So here is the main question to ask yourself if you don't talk to your family. Did you leave to save yourself? Or did you leave so you wouldn't have to feel anything anymore? Because boundaries are not always leaving. But closeness is not something that must be preserved at any cost. Sometimes family is a place you can return to, and sometimes it's a place you have to leave in order to finally start living. And that is one of the hardest choices a person can ever make.